Construction sector says it may be difficult to take down all scaffolding nettings by Saturday. Education University is helping students whose school is affected by the Taipo fire. And French President Emmanuel Macron continues his visit to China. Hello and welcome to TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. Tomorrow is the deadline for all scaffolding nettings on buildings under renovation to be taken down, as mandated by the government on Wednesday. However, the construction sector has doubts on whether it can be done by Saturday. The order applies to some 200 private buildings and 10 public projects across the city. The owner's corporation of Wang Fuk Court in Shatin has already applied to the government for an extension. Meanwhile, a scaffolding workers union said there are some 3,000 registered scaffolding workers in Hong Kong, but not all of them can be deployed immediately for the removal work. Chairman of the Hong Kong and Kowloon Bamboo Scaffolding Workers Union, Ho Ping Tak, doubted if the construction industry will be able to meet the government deadline, citing a labor shortage of at least 1,000. Elegance Gardens, a housing estate in Tuen Mun that used the same contractor as Wang Fuk Court in Taipo, namely Prestige Construction and Engineering Company, has suspended repair work. This after Prestige was found to have shown deficiencies during the project. Another contractor will handle the net dismantling work, while Prestige will shoulder the costs. Samantha Lee reports.
Workers were pulling down scaffolding netting from buildings in Elegance Gardens. The three-block residential complex, where facade painting work is underway, is home to some 670 households. Initially, Prestige Construction and Engineering Company was responsible for the job. Each household must bear a cost of $70,000 to $110,000 for the $70 million renovation work. However, the estate's property management company has sent a letter to Prestige pointing out several issues, including deficient construction quality, substantial project delays, and delayed wages. The project's consulting company had written to Prestige earlier. Prestige said it agreed to continue the renovation, but suggested letting other contractors take up the netting removal work. The estate management chose the lowest bidder among 4 quotes, ranging from $328,000 to $2.2 million. TVB News earlier sampled part of the scaffolding netting. It caught fire immediately after being ignited with a lighter. Some owners agreed to take down the netting, but some were concerned about having to pay extra money for the remaining repair work. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Police officers continued their search for people at Wang Fuk Court today. The deadly Taipo blaze has caused 159 deaths. About 31 people remain missing. Members of the Disaster Victim Identification Unit, or DVIU, arrived at Wang Fuk Court on Friday morning. Sources say the unit's main tasks of the day include searching for bodies under fallen bamboo scaffolding at Wang Chung and Wang Tai House, as well as setting up observation points at the fire site for exterior building inspection purposes. At Quang Phuc Park, the public mourning for the deceased continues. A paper crane wall has been formed out of respect for the deceased. Some held white flowers and prayed. The Education University of Hong Kong has set up a temporary support center for Taipo students affected by the blaze. About 300 children affected by the fire are currently going to the university to take classes each day. Mimo Singai reports.
These Year 7 students are having their PE class at the sports hall. The other side of the hall is being used as a dining area. And squash courts have been transformed into classrooms. These students are from Taipo Baptist Public School near Wang Fuk Court, which has about 600 students and teachers. About half of them started studying here because their school site was closed after the devastating blaze that happened over a week ago. While the Education Bureau has organized some students and teachers to attend classes at 2 other Taipo schools, the Education University of Hong Kong also helped out by providing class venues and arranging transport. Meanwhile, post-disaster mental health and grief support is available for students and teachers at the university.
When they are experiencing and even expressing some of their distress, the adults ought to be calm and accepting. What we need to do is to connect with them, to accept them, and also to enable them to even participate in some of the relief actions.
The university will operate the temporary support center until January, but authorities will make adjustments if needed. Members 9, TVB News.
A prayer for the Taipo fire victims was held at the Kowloon Mosque. The prayer was attended by consul generals from various countries, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and Iran. Many Muslims stayed behind after their weekly Friday prayers. The Taipo fire has killed 159 people, including 10 foreign domestic helpers. A police officer is in critical condition after being injured on Thursday during a selection exercise for the force's Elite Special Duties Unit, or SDU. Sources say he lost consciousness after jumping into the sea from a height of 8 meters. Commissioner of Police Joe Chow visited the injured officer at Princess Margaret Hospital this afternoon. The injured officer is a 31-year-old senior inspector who has served for 9 years. He was taking part in a selection test for the SDU known as the Flying Tigers. The test involved swimming and diving tasks. The force extended its sympathies to the officer's family and immediately suspended the selection process. The Hong Kong and Macau office of the CPC Central Committee forwarded a commentary from Ta Kung Pao, which said a new legislative council should be elected as soon as possible to ensure the timely passage of bills related to post-disaster reconstruction. It also urged citizens to vote. The article said a swift election of a new legislative council is crucial for the timely passage of bills related to post-disaster reconstruction and the approval of relevant funding, which will support the SAR government in disaster relief and post-disaster recovery efforts. It called on all sectors to transform grief into strength and do their utmost to organize the election and actively participate in voting. French President Emmanuel Macron continued his state visit to China today. He visited the Dujiangyan irrigation system and Sichuan University and had friendly exchanges. Danny Zhou has more.
French President Emmanuel Macron was accompanied by President Xi Jinping in a sightseeing trip on Friday at the Dujiangyan Dam after arriving in Chengdu, the sister city of French city Montpellier, the previous day. Xi and First Lady Peng Liyuan showed the French first couple around the UNESCO World Heritage Site built against a scenic landscape. Dating back to more than 2 millennia ago in the Warring States period, Dujiangyan is the only ancient irrigation project still functioning to this day. She said the dam exemplifies harmonious coexistence between humanity and nature, noting the water management philosophy inspires wisdom of modern-day governance. Xi recalled his visit to the Haute-Pyrenees department of France last year and said he believed Macron's trip will help deepen his understanding of China. An informal meeting was held between the two leaders in a more relaxed setting. Later in the afternoon, Macron reportedly received a big welcome from Sichuan University students. In an address, he warned the unprecedented rupture in the post-war world based on multilateralism and called on world powers to strengthen cooperation. Brigitte Macron, meanwhile, headed to the Chengdu research base of giant panda breeding, where 2 pandas loaned to France have recently returned. Media reports say some business deals between China and France have been signed. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Still ahead, Russian President Vladimir Putin holds talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Donald Trump praises leaders of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda for a deal to ending their conflict. And at least 4 countries pull out of Eurovision Song Contest after organizers decided to allow Israel to take part. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in India to hold talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at an annual summit. Nazvi Karim with more.
A special welcome in New Delhi for Russian President Vladimir Putin. A guard of honor ahead of talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the 23rd Russia-India summit. The summit is aimed at strengthening bilateral ties, and the agenda includes discussions on defense, energy and labor mobility. India has historically maintained deep ties with Russia, but their close bonds may strain relations with the European Union and the United States, both of whom are negotiating major trade agreements with New Delhi and our key export markets. Before the talks, Putin hailed Russia-India ties, saying cooperation opportunities are expanding, including new areas such as technology, aviation, space and artificial intelligence. Putin said the two countries have a very trusting relationship when it comes to military technical cooperation. US President Donald Trump raised tariffs on Indian goods to 50% in August, citing New Delhi's discounted Russian oil. India has been the second biggest importer of Russian crude after China. The US says purchases of Russian oil help finance Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Modi said, India is not neutral. India takes the side of peace. We all support all efforts for peace. We stand shoulder to shoulder with respect to peace. He added that he supported an expansion of Indo-Russian economic relations. In October, the US sanctioned 2 of Moscow's biggest oil producers to force countries like India to cut down on imports. In his meeting with Putin, Modi is likely to push for faster delivery of 2 more Russian S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. It has already received 3 under a 2018 deal worth about $5.4 billion. The delay has been tied to supply chain disruptions linked to the war in Ukraine. The two sides signed a pact in February to improve military cooperation, exercises, port calls, disaster relief assistance and logistics support. Bilateral trade between the two countries stood at $68.7 billion in the fiscal year ending in March, with an aim to boost it to $100 billion by 2030. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump praised the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda for their courage as they signed on to a deal aimed at ending the conflict in eastern Congo. Trump also announced the United States was signing bilateral agreements with the Congo and Rwanda that will unlock new opportunities for Washington to access critical minerals. Daniel Rell tells us more.
U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Presidents Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Paul Kagame of Rwanda, as well as several officials from other African nations who traveled to Washington, D.C. to witness the signing. The Central African nation of Congo has been battered by decades-long fighting with more than 100 armed groups, the most potent being the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. The conflict can be traced to the aftermath of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, where Hutu militias killed between 500,000 and 1 million ethnic Tutsi, as well as moderate Hutus and Twa indigenous people. The conflict escalated this year with M23 seizing the region's main cities of Goma and Bukavu. The pact between Tshisekedi and Kagame follows months-long peace efforts by the US and partners and finalizes an earlier deal signed in June. Analysts say the deal isn't expected to quickly result in peace. However, Trump predicted the countries would leave behind decades of violence and bloodshed.
Today we commit to stopping decades of violence and bloodshed and to begin a new era of harmony and cooperation between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. I want to thank the two courageous leaders. They are courageous leaders.
Trump also announced the United States was signing bilateral agreements with the Congo and Rwanda that will unlock new opportunities for Washington to access critical minerals. The region, rich in critical minerals, has been of interest to Trump as Washington looks for ways to circumvent China to acquire rare earths, essential to manufacturing fighter jets, mobile phones and more. China accounts for nearly 70% of the world's rare earth mining and controls roughly 90% of global rare earths processing. Danaral TV News.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said America's trade with China needs to be balanced and probably smaller. He added a 25% drop in goods trade with China is seen as heading in the right direction. Greer was speaking at the American Growth Summit, a policy conference in Washington. He said the two countries should not be so dependent on each other in areas of non-sensitive goods. He said U.S. President Donald Trump's policies were helping to achieve more balanced trade with China, and the situation was better than at the start of Trump's second term. Greer said no one wanted a full-on economic conflict with China, and the priority is for stability. Ireland, the Netherlands, Spain, and Slovenia have pulled out of next year's Eurovision Song Contest after organizers decided to allow Israel to compete. The walkouts came after the General Assembly of the European Broadcasting Union, a group of public broadcasters from 56 countries that runs the Eurovision Song Contest, met to discuss concerns about Israel's participation. The EBU decided to allow Israel to compete at a meeting in Geneva despite opposition from some countries over Israel's conduct in the Gaza war, where many civilians were killed. The music gala draws more than 100 million viewers every year. Icelandic broadcaster RUV said its chiefs would meet next Wednesday to discuss whether Iceland would take part. Its board last week recommended that Israel be barred from the event in the Austrian capital. The family of a British woman killed in a Russian nerve agent attack in British soil in 2018 have said she is at peace after an inquiry concluded that President Vladimir Putin was responsible for her death. Dawn Sturgis and her partner collapsed after they came into contact with a discarded perfume bottle containing the nerve agent Novichok. She had sprayed the contents of the bottle on her wrist and died days later. Her partner survived. The British government summoned Moscow's ambassador and sanctioned Russia's GRU intelligence agency over the attack in the city of Salisbury that targeted Sergei Skripal, a former Soviet agent who had defected to Britain. Skripal and his daughter Yulia became seriously ill but survived. Former UK Supreme Court Justice Anthony Hughes, who led an inquiry into Sturgis's death, said that the attack on the Skripals must have been authorized at the highest level by Putin. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the findings of the inquiry showed Russia's shocking and reckless hostile activity on UK soil.
Moral responsibility lies with Putin, and it's further evidence of the shocking and reckless hostile activity on UK soil. And so it's very important that we put in the most stringent sanctions on the GRU for the first time, but it also reinforces why we need to remain vigilant to the ever-present threat that is there from Putin and from Russia. That's not just in Ukraine. In this case, the report is clear, it's on our soil.
Back locally, Chief Executive John Lee said the government will provide mental health services to those affected by the Taipo fire. Speaking to the media on Friday evening, the CE said the government hopes to help survivors walk through the challenges and resume their lives as soon as possible. John Lee stressed that authorities will continue to provide support for all affected individuals. He added that discussions on how to help the community will be initiated once the new Legislative Council is established. The airport authority expects a peak of about 1,200 flights taking off and landing per day at the airport during the Christmas and New Year period. The peak period for departing flights will be from December 24th to 26th, while the peak period for arriving flights will be from January 1st to 4th. The authority said during this year's Easter holiday, a peak of 200,000 passengers was reached per day, and passenger flow during the upcoming Christmas and New Year holidays is expected to be similar. Meanwhile, the airport authority is holding a recruitment event for 2 days, offering over 1,500 jobs. The airport's demand for manpower is expected to increase further with the increase in flight volume and future airport development. And the final supermoon to close out 2025 graced the night skies in China from Thursday evening through early Friday. A large bright moon could be seen clearly at the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests in Beijing's Temple of Heaven on Thursday night. An expert from the Beijing Planetarium says the supermoon was at its roundest at about 7 a.m. on Friday. The astronomical event appears when a full moon is closest to Earth. That is the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.